Now we have the intergroup conflict us versus them, competition and conflict. Under it, we have the realistic group conflict theory. Many of the things that groups want and need are available in limited supply. It is also a conceptual framework arguing that conflict between groups stems from competition for scarce resources, including food, territory, wealth, power, natural resources, and energy. So realistic group conflict theory states that whenever there are two or more groups that are seeking the same limited resources, this will lead to conflict, negative stereotypes, beliefs, and discrimination between the groups. Next, we have the Robbers Cave experiment, a field study that examined the causes and consequences of conflict between two groups of boys at Robbers Cave State Park in Oklahoma, designed and conducted by Muzaffar and Caroline Sharif and their colleagues. So Robbers Cave experiment demonstrated that an attempt to simply bring hostile groups together is not enough to reduce intergroup prejudice. Next, we have discontinuity effect, the markedly greater competitiveness of groups when interacting with other groups relative to the competitiveness of individuals interacting with other individuals is also inconsistent, which suggests that it emerges due to a number of causes, which may ultimately combine to intensify intergroup conflict. Discontinuity across social interactions. This discontinuity between individuals and groups is not confined to groups playing a structured conflict game. When researchers examined everyday social interactions, they found that group activities were marked by more competition than one on one activities. Participants diligently recorded their interpersonal activities for an entire week, classifying them into one of five categories. And these categories are one on one interactions, dyadic interactions such as playing chess, walking to class with another person. Next, we have within group interactions, where interacting with other members of one groups such as a club meeting or a classroom discussion. Next, we have one-on-group interactions, where interacting as a single individual with a group, such as a student meeting with the honor council. Next, we have group-on-one interactions, where interacting as a part of a group with a single individual, such as a class confronting a teacher over a grading policy. Next, we have group-on-group interactions, where interacting as part of a group with another group, such as a soccer game or a joint session of two classes. Causes of discontinuity. The consistency of the discontinuity effect suggests that it springs from a number of causes that combine to exacerbate conflicts between groups, including greed, fear, and social identity. First, individuals are greedy, but groups are even greedier. Second, people fear groups more than they fear individuals. Third, individuals who identify with their group tend to act to maximize the group's collective outcomes, even if that comes at a cost to those outside of the group. Are collectivist peacemakers, even though collectivists express less anger, hostility, and aggression when dealing with members of their own group, when interacting with a member of the outgroup, they display more hostility than individualists. Next, we have the individualism. Individualism stresses the rights of the individual. Individualists tend to make choices that maximize their own outcomes, so in general, they respond more competitively in conflict situations. Next, we have collectivism. Collectivism exalts the rights of the group. Collectivists are more likely to adopt harmony-enhancing strategies than minimize conflict, including following rules that will yield a fair resolution to the disagreement. Next, we have deterring discontinuity. A tolerant appeasement approach to conflict also provides effective in reducing discontinuity. As with studies of individuals, when groups respond cooperatively, even when the other party competes, hoping to signal their good intentions and inviting a reduction in conflict, the other group responds by exploiting the pacifistic group. Next, we have the power and domination. Intergroup conflict is a disagreement or confrontation between two or more groups and their members, such as between work departments, entire companies, political parties, or nations. This may also involve interpersonal discord, psychological tension, or physical violence. So, intergroup conflict is also one of the most prominent reasons for intergroup conflict is simply the nature of the group. It causes changes to occur both within the groups in conflict and between them. Next is intergroup exploitation. One group tries to dominate the other. Not only do groups wish to monopolize contested resources, but they also wish to gain control over the other group's resources, which can include its wealth, land, peoples, and identity. And this is according to Rohana and Bartal on 1998. Next, we have the social dominance theory, an approach to oppression and domination assuming that conflict between groups results from dynamic tensions between hierarchically ranked groups within society that was developed by Jim Sedanius, Felicia Prato, and their colleagues. In psychology, this theory states that inequality among groups is maintained in and also it is a part through the use of disproportionate, and example of this is the white male hierarchy is more dominant than minority racial groups. Next, we have the corrective effects of dominance. This cycle of domination and resistance occurs between nations, classes, ethnic groups, the success, and even the small groups in controlled experimental situations. Individual differences in social dominance. People differ in their appraisal of these disparities in power and status, where some challenge this inequality, others support the idea that some groups should be dominant and others oppressed. Individuals with high levels of social dominance orientation or SDO strive to maximize their group's gains, particularly in relationship to other groups' outcome. So studies have found that compared to women, men expresses higher levels of SDO or social dominance orientation. Next, we have eliminating rivals. Players receive feedback as they played each round, and this feedback was controlled so that some were told they were losing the competition, but others were led to believe they were winning. The players were also given the opportunity to punish their opponent by taking some or all of their points and by eliminating them from the competition altogether. Consistent with the discontinuity effect, groups exacted more severe punishments, and they also eliminated their rivals earlier in the contest than did individuals. Next, we have the intergroup aggression, anger, and retaliation. When intergroup competition ends, one side is often branded the winner and one the loser. Like the victorious Eagles, winners experience a range of positive emotions including pride, pleasure, happiness, and satisfaction. Next, we have frustration aggression hypothesis, an early motivational model that argued that individuals became more aggressive whenever external conditions prevent them from reaching their goals. We have general aggression model, a framework for organizing biological, environmental, social, and psychological factors that influence the expression of hostile, negative behavior, including 1. Person and situational inputs. We have 2. Cognitive, affective, and arousal states, and 3. Cognitive appraisals. Next, we have the scapegoat processes. Scapegoating is more likely when a group has experienced difficult, prolonged negative conditions that frustrate its success in meeting its most essential needs, and this is according to Staub on 2004. We have the scapegoat theory, an explanation of intergroup conflict arguing that hostility caused by frustrating environmental circumstances, such as abuse by others or failure, is released by taking hostile actions against members of other social groups. Next, we have norms and conflict. Intergroup conflicts, such as war between nations, gang fights, or even the conflict between the Rattlers and the Eagles, are not out of control. A typical interpersonal actions that occur when the social order breaks down. The norm of reciprocity, or groups like individuals tend to obey the norm of reciprocity. They answer threats with threats, insults with insults, and aggression with aggression. Next, we have the spiral model of conflict intensification. Accurately describes the unfolding of violence at Robbers Cave. The conflict began with minor irritations and annoyances but built in intensity. Next, we have exclusion, a mild form of rejection, occurred as soon as the boys realized that another group was sharing the camp. Next, we have the verbal abuse. Insults were exchanged, members of the opposing team were given demeaning names, and verbal abuse ran high. Intergroup discrimination. The groups isolated themselves from each other at meals, and the boys expressed the belief that it was wrong for the other team to use the camp facilities or to be given an equal amount of food. Next, we have cultural norms. The extent to which groups respond in hostile ways to other groups varies from culture to culture. A culture's emphasis on honor, dignity, and saving face may also influence how people in that culture deal with conflict, such as 1.